The galaxy had many kinds of places. Some were filled with light, music, and trade of fine goods. Others were dark, hidden, and filled with fear. The market in the outer rim was one of those dark places. It was not a market of food, tools, or art. It was a market of lives. The air in the wide hall was heavy. The walls were made of iron plates, covered with marks from hundreds of different species. Lanterns hung from high beams, casting sharp shadows across the floor. Voices echoed as merchants and buyers moved around, speaking in many tongues. The smell of oil mixed with the smell of fear. It was a place where hope was rare. Cages stood in long rows. Each cage held someone taken from a world far away. Some cages held creatures with scales that shimmered like stone. Some held small beings with wings folded tight. Others held tall figures whose eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Every cage had a number stamped on a plate. No names were written, only numbers. Names had no meaning here. In one of the cages sat a young woman. She was quiet, her back pressed against the cold bars. She had a soft natural beauty, though her face showed the marks of long days in this place. Her hair fell loose over her shoulders, and her eyes held both fear and strength. She did not speak. She had learned that words here carried no weight. Around her, other captives whispered. Some spoke of the buyers who would come. Others spoke of escape, though their voices carried no true belief. Most knew the truth. Once inside the market, there was little chance of leaving free. The young woman listened but did not join. She thought of her home, though the memory was fading. She thought of her family, though their faces grew dim with time. She wondered if anyone beyond these walls still cared for her, or if she had been forgotten like so many others. The noise in the hall grew louder. The merchants were preparing for the day's auction. Buyers from across the sector gathered, carrying tokens of wealth. Some were tall insectoid beings with long arms and sharp eyes. Some were bulky, covered in shells that clicked as they walked. Others wore long robes that hid their forms, only their voices showing any life. All of them shared one thing: they looked at the cages not with pity but with hunger for profit or control. A large platform stood at the center of the hall. This was where the auctioneer would stand, calling out prices, calling out numbers, and sealing the fates of those behind bars. Guards with heavy armor and shock sticks walked between the cages, keeping all captives silent. The young woman lowered her gaze when one of the guards passed. She had seen what happened when others spoke out. Yet inside her, a small ember still burned. She did not know why, but she held to it. Something told her that her story was not meant to end in a cage. As the crowd grew thick around the platform, a stir moved through the hall. Whispers rose and spread from one buyer to another. Heads turned toward the entry gate. A human had entered the market. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. They did not often travel here, and when they did, they kept to themselves. Yet this one walked into the market line with steady steps. His clothing was simple, his face calm, and his eyes sharp. He carried no weapon, but there was a weight to his presence that drew attention. The young woman lifted her head. For the first time in many cycles, she felt something shift. The human did not look like the other buyers. He did not carry greed in his gaze. Instead, he stood still in the line, watching, waiting. The merchants muttered among themselves. Some laughed quietly, others frowned. They could not guess why a human would come to this place. But none of them dared to push him away. Stories of humans had traveled across the stars. They were not the strongest or the fastest, yet they had earned respect for their strange mix of courage and cunning. The auction began. The auctioneer, a tall being with grey skin and long fingers, stepped onto the platform. His voice rang out, calling the first number. A cage opened, and a figure was brought forward. Prices were shouted, tokens exchanged, and the first captive was claimed. The process moved on, one after another, each life sold with little care. The young woman's heart pounded as her turn grew near. She pressed her hands together, forcing herself to stay still. Her cage door creaked as the guards unlocked it. She rose slowly, her legs weak but steady. The light from the lanterns fell across her face as she was led toward the platform. The auctioneer smiled, ready to call her number. The crowd leaned forward. Voices rose, ready to bid. She felt their eyes on her, heavy and sharp. Fear tightened her chest. Then, before the auctioneer could speak, the human in the line raised his hand. The hall fell silent. Every gaze turned to him. The merchants stopped muttering. Even the guards paused. The human stood firm, his hand still lifted, his face calm. His eyes did not leave the young woman. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air felt thick, as if the entire market waited to hear what he would say. And when he finally spoke, his voice was clear. The human's raised hand froze the market in silence. No one had expected it. Buyers leaned forward, their eyes sharp with curiosity. Merchants exchanged nervous glances. The guards tightened their grip on their shock sticks, uncertain if they should move or wait. The young woman on the platform stood still, her breath caught in her chest. The auctioneer, tall and grey-skinned, tilted his head. His long fingers tapped against the wooden edge of the platform. He had run auctions for many years and thought he had seen every kind of buyer. But this was new. Few humans ever came to this market, and fewer still dared to interrupt the order of trade. The auctioneer's voice echoed across the hall. This is the market. Rules are clear. Lives are sold by number. You stand in line, you pay, and you take what is given. What does a human think he is doing here? The human did not lower his hand. His voice was steady, calm, and clear. She is not for sale. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some buyers laughed, their voices harsh and sharp. Others murmured in confusion. To them, the words of one man held no weight against the rules of the market. Yet no one dared to step too close to him. The human stood with a calmness that unsettled them. The auctioneer's eyes narrowed. Not for sale? Every life here has been marked, numbered, and chosen for the block. None leave without price. You have coin, human? You may bid like the rest. But do not speak against the order. The young woman's heart raced. She had seen many captives sold, but never once had someone stood to stop it. She could not understand his purpose. Was it pity? Was it madness? Or was there some hidden reason? She could only stare, caught between hope and disbelief. The human lowered his hand only slightly but did not move away. His gaze never left the young woman. His tone did not rise in anger, but each word carried weight. She will not be treated as property. I claim her freedom. The laughter in the hall grew louder. A thick-shelled merchant with clicking jaws slammed a heavy fist against the floor. Freedom? There is no freedom here. Only trade. This is the market of the strong, not the weak ideals of humans. Another, robed and faceless beneath his hood, spoke with a voice like dry wind. If you wish to buy her, then pay. But do not speak of freedom in this place. Such words are dangerous. The auctioneer raised his hand for silence, though his own lips curled in a faint smile. He had seen defiance before. Usually, it ended quickly. Human, the market does not bend for you. If you claim her, then show your worth. Do you challenge the rules? The hall seemed to lean closer, every pair of eyes waiting. The guards stepped forward, ready to seize the human if he faltered. But he did not falter. His answer came with the same calm as before. Yes. I challenge. The crowd erupted. Voices clashed against one another in shock and disbelief. Some shouted that the human was mad. Others whispered of stories they had heard. Tales of humans who had stood against empires, not with strength of body but with sharpness of mind. Whispers of battles turned by courage and cunning. Few believed those tales, but now the idea spread like fire in the market. The auctioneer's long fingers drummed again. His smile widened, though his eyes were cold. Then the market will test you. No life leaves this hall without proof of strength. If you defeat what we place before you, the girl is yours. Fail, and both of you will serve as property. Do you accept this trial? The human nodded once. I accept. The young woman's breath caught again. She wanted to speak, to warn him, to tell him not to risk his life for her. But no words came. Her throat felt locked. She could only watch as the crowd parted to make space. At the far side of the hall, heavy doors opened with a deep grind of metal. From the shadows within, shapes began to move. The guardians of the market stepped forward. They were not living beings but machines built for strength and obedience. Their bodies were tall, covered in metal plates. Their arms ended in heavy claws and blades. Their eyes glowed red, casting thin beams of light across the floor. The crowd cheered at the sight. Many had seen the guardians before. They had ended the defiance of others with ease. Few had ever lasted more than a minute against them. To most in the hall, the outcome was already decided. The human stepped into the circle, calm as before. He carried no weapon. He wore no armor. Yet his stance held no fear. His eyes studied the machines as if measuring them, as if finding something others did not see. The auctioneer raised his hand and lowered it. The trial began. The first guardian moved with speed, its claw sweeping low toward the human's legs. Gasps rose from the crowd. But the human was faster than expected. He shifted his weight, stepping aside, and the claw struck only the floor. Sparks flew. The human's hand pressed against the machine's arm, guiding it further until the weight of its own strike pulled it off balance. The second guardian lunged forward. Its blade arm cut through the air, aimed at the human's chest. Again, he moved. He ducked low, rolled to the side, and rose behind the machine. With one sharp kick, he struck the joint in its leg. The machine stumbled, gears grinding. The crowd roared with surprise. This was not the flailing of a fool. This was skill. This was control. The human was not stronger than the machines, but he used their strength against them. He saw openings where others saw walls. The young woman gripped the bars at the side of the platform. For the first time since her capture, her heart rose with something more than fear. She felt hope. The guardians regrouped. Two came at once, claws and blades flashing. The human moved between them, letting one strike miss and strike the other. Sparks flew again. The machine staggered, and the human struck quick blows to their joints. Bit by bit, the guardians slowed, until the circle fell silent. The crowd, once certain of his defeat, now stared in awe. No one laughed now. Even the auctioneer's smile had faded. The human stood tall in the center of the broken machines. His chest rose with steady breaths, but his eyes were calm. He looked toward the young woman again, as if to remind her that his words had not been empty. The trial was not over, but the market had seen enough to understand. The circle of the market was silent. The broken guardians lay scattered across the floor, sparks hissing from their cracked joints. The human stood among them, calm as stone. He had not shouted, he had not boasted, and yet his presence filled the hall. The crowd, once certain of his defeat, now whispered in awe. Buyers who had laughed now looked uneasy. Merchants shifted in place, their pride shaken. The guards gripped their shock sticks tighter, though none stepped forward. The young woman, still standing near the platform, stared at him with wide eyes. She had seen others fall in the circle. She had seen their cries silenced by the guardians. Yet he had stood alone, and he had won. Her heart beat faster. For the first time, the weight of the market did not crush her completely. The auctioneer, tall and grey-skinned, tried to hide his unease. His fingers tapped the wooden edge of the platform as his voice rang out. The human has passed the trial. Strength has been shown. But the market does not move by strength alone. What is it you claim, human? Speak so all can hear. The human turned his gaze from the broken machines to the platform. His eyes found the young woman again. His voice was steady, not loud but clear enough to carry across the hall. I claim her freedom. The words struck like thunder. The crowd erupted at once. Some laughed again, though their laughter was nervous. Some shouted in anger, calling the claim foolish. Others whispered, their voices filled with curiosity. A human asking for freedom in this place was unheard of. This was a hall where freedom had no meaning. Lives here were numbers, not people. Yet he had spoken the word as if it could not be denied. The auctioneer raised his hand, demanding silence. His smile returned, though it was sharper than before. Freedom? You stand in a hall where lives are coin. You cannot rewrite the order of the market with words. You may buy. You may take. But do not speak of freedom here. The human did not move. His gaze stayed fixed on the auctioneer, steady as ever. She is not property. No one here is property. I will not buy her. I will not trade. I will take her from this place as a person, not as a number. Gasps filled the hall. The words spread quickly, repeated by voices in disbelief. Some buyers mocked him, waving their tokens in the air. Madness, one shouted. Pay or leave. But not all voices mocked. Some in the crowd fell silent, troubled by his claim. Few would admit it, but deep inside they knew the truth. They had grown used to treating lives as trade, but the human's words had forced them to face what they ignored. The auctioneer's smile faded again. His long fingers curled tight against the platform edge. You dare defy the market? If you refuse the rules, then your life is forfeit. Guards, seize him. The guards stepped forward, their armor clattering, shock sticks glowing with power. The crowd leaned closer, eager to see what would happen. Some thought the human had pushed too far. Others waited to see if he could face not machines but living enforcers. The young woman's breath caught. Fear pressed at her chest. She wanted to cry out, to tell him to run, but her voice stayed trapped in her throat. She could only watch as the guards closed in. The human stood firm. He did not raise his hands in surrender. He did not retreat. He looked at the guards with calm eyes, as if he had already seen the path ahead. When the first guard swung his stick, the human moved. His hand caught the strike at the wrist. With a twist, he pulled the weapon away and struck the guard's chest with the butt of the stick. The armored figure stumbled back. The second guard lunged, but the human spun, his stick sweeping low to knock the guard's legs from beneath him. The figure fell with a heavy crash. The crowd roared again. Some shouted in anger, others in awe. The human moved with a speed and control that no one in the hall could match. He did not fight with rage. He fought with precision, turning the force of the guards against them. One by one, the guards fell back. Some dropped their sticks, unwilling to step closer. The auctioneer's eyes widened, his face darkening with fury. He had lost control of his hall, and he knew it. The human stood once more in the center of the circle. He held no weapon now, only his steady voice. "You can bring machines. You can bring guards. It will not change what I said. She is not for sale. She is free." The young woman's eyes burned with tears she did not expect. For so long, no one had spoken for her. No one had even seen her as more than a number. Now, in front of the entire market, a stranger had stood and claimed her freedom as if it were beyond question. The crowd was divided. Some shouted for the auctioneer to end the challenge. Others called for the human to be honored. Whispers grew louder, spreading through every corner of the hall. Stories of humans had been told before, but now they had seen with their own eyes what one human could do. The auctioneer slammed his hand against the platform, his voice sharp with rage. "Enough! This market will not be broken by one man. He claims freedom, then let him prove he can take it. He may leave with her if he survives what comes next. If not, both will remain here forever." The human gave no sign of fear. He only nodded once, as if the words had been expected. His gaze turned to the young woman again, and for the first time she saw not only calmness in his eyes but a promise. In that moment, she understood. He was not here to win wealth or pride. He was here to stand against the weight of the market itself. And whether he walked out alive or not, he had already given her something no one else had dared to offer. He had given her hope. The hall of the market trembled with noise. Merchants shouted, buyers argued, and guards shifted uneasily in their armor. The human had not only broken the guardians but also cast down the enforcers. His words about freedom still hung in the air, and no one could silence them. The auctioneer stood on the platform, his long fingers curled tight around the edge. His grey face had lost its calm smile. Now his eyes burned with anger. He had ruled this market for many years. No one had ever dared to challenge him in front of the crowd. Yet this human, small in frame compared to the other species, had forced every eye to turn. The auctioneer raised his hand high. His voice rang across the hall like iron striking stone. "You speak of freedom, human. You claim what cannot be claimed. If you wish to take her, then you must pass the final test. Fail, and you both will be chained forever." The crowd hushed, leaning forward to hear more. Some called for the human's end. Others whispered with wonder, eager to see if the stories of humans were true. The human did not flinch. He looked up at the auctioneer, his voice calm as ever. "I accept your test." The young woman, still on the platform, felt her knees weaken. She had seen the guardians fall. She had seen the guards defeated. Yet this was different. The auctioneer's words carried a weight that made her chest tighten. What test could be worse than what he had already faced? She wanted to cry out, to beg him to stop, but fear kept her voice locked away. The auctioneer gave a signal. The heavy doors at the far side of the hall opened again. This time, the sound was deeper, heavier, like thunder rolling through iron tunnels. The floor shook as something vast moved in the shadows. From the darkness emerged a beast of metal and flesh combined. Taller than any guard, heavier than any machine, it stepped into the light with claws that dug into the stone floor. Its chest was covered in plates, its back bristling with spikes. Its eyes glowed with cold blue fire, and steam hissed from vents along its body. The crowd gasped. Some cheered wildly. Others fell silent, knowing what they saw. This was the champion of the market, a creature built and bred for destruction. Few had even seen it, and none had survived facing it. The auctioneer's lips curved in a cruel smile. Here is your test, human. Face the beast. If you stand when it falls, the girl is yours. If you fall, your hope dies with you. The beast roared, a sound that shook dust from the beams above. The young woman pressed her hands against the bars, her heart racing. She wanted to shut her eyes, but she could not look away. The human stood at the center of the hall, small against the giant, yet he did not waver. The circle cleared. The buyers pulled back, eager to watch. The guards held their ground at the edges, though many looked uneasy. The beast stomped forward, steam hissing from its vents. Each step cracked the stone beneath it. The human adjusted his stance, his eyes fixed on the creature. He had no weapon, no shield, only his mind and his will. He studied the beast as it moved, noting how its weight shifted, how the plates of its armor overlapped, how its vents released bursts of steam. The auctioneer raised his hand and dropped it. The beast charged. It moved with surprising speed for its size. Its claws slashed down, aiming to crush the human in one strike. But the human rolled aside, the claw smashing into the floor and sending shards of stone into the air. The ground shook beneath the impact. The crowd roared, some cheering for the beast, others for the man. The beast turned, its glowing eyes fixed on its target. It swung again, faster this time. The human ducked low, then sprang up, striking the beast's arm with his bare fist. The sound of flesh against metal rang out, but the human had not aimed to break the arm. He had aimed to test the weight, to feel the strength. His eyes sharpened. The beast roared again and lunged with its massive jaws. The human leapt back, barely avoiding the snap of steel teeth. Steam burst from the creature's vents, clouding the circle in white mist. The human's form disappeared in the haze. The young woman gripped the bars tighter, her breath shallow. She could not see him, only hear the pounding of claws and the hiss of steam. Her heart begged for him to survive, though she did not know why he risked everything for her. Through the mist, a shadow moved. The human darted to the side, striking the vent on the beast's shoulder. Steam burst out wildly, the beast staggering for a moment. The human landed lightly and circled again, his eyes always watching, always measuring. The auctioneer's smile faltered. He had expected the human to be crushed quickly, but the fight dragged on. The crowd, too, grew restless. Whispers spread again. Some began to wonder if the human could truly succeed. The beast roared and swung both claws at once. The human dropped low, sliding across the floor beneath the arc of the strike. As he passed under, he drove his fist into the softer joint of the beast's knee. Metal cracked, gears groaned, and the creature stumbled forward. The crowd cried out in shock. The young woman's eyes widened. The human had found a weakness where none believed it existed. The beast tried to rise, but its knee bent wrong, its weight dragging it down. The human climbed its back with swift movements, his hands gripping the plates until he reached the vents. With one sharp strike, he jammed the vent open, releasing a storm of steam into the air. The beast thrashed, but the human held on, moving with purpose until he reached the base of its neck. There, between the heavy plates, was a small gap. The human drove his hand into it, pulling wires and cords free. Sparks burst, and the beast let out a final roar before crashing to the ground. The hall shook with the impact. Dust rose into the air. The giant beast lay still, its eyes fading to black. The human stood on its back, calm once more, his chest rising with steady breath. He looked toward the young woman, and their eyes met across the silence. The crowd erupted again, but this time the sound was different. No longer only mocking or angry, but filled with awe and fear. The human had faced what none had faced before, and he had won. The auctioneer's hands trembled as he gripped the platform. His face, once smug, now showed disbelief. The rules of the market had been answered, and the human had not broken. The human stepped down from the beast and spoke, his voice steady as ever. "The test is finished. She is free." The words echoed, clear and unshaken. And in that moment, even those who doubted could not deny what they had seen.
The great beast lay broken in the center of the hall. Its metal body no longer moved, its glowing eyes dimmed into silence. Dust still hung in the air, settling slowly on the cracked stone floor. The human stepped away from the fallen creature, calm as if the storm of the fight had not touched him. His clothes were torn, his arms carried scratches, yet his stance was steady. His eyes lifted toward the platform where the auctioneer stood, and his voice carried across the hushed crowd. "The test is finished. She is free." The young woman felt her chest tighten. She had heard the word before, but never for herself. For so long she had been a number, a figure behind bars, an item waiting to be sold. Now, in front of all the merchants, guards, and buyers, the word had been spoken for her. Free. The crowd reacted with chaos. Some shouted that the test was unfair, that no human should have won. Others cheered, their voices rising with excitement. Many stood in silence, unable to look away from the man who had done what none had dared. The auctioneer's gray face twisted with fury. His long fingers trembled as they gripped the edge of the platform. His voice, sharp as a blade, cut through the noise. "This is not finished. The market does not bend to one man's will. She may leave only if the choice is made." The crowd stilled, unsure of his meaning. The young woman looked up at him, fear returning to her eyes. The auctioneer spread his arms wide. "Let her decide. She stands here by the human's claim. If she chooses him, she may walk out. If she does not, she remains as property." The air grew heavy. All eyes turned to the young woman. Her hands shook as she gripped the bars of the platform. The weight of hundreds of gazes pressed on her. For so long, she had been voiceless. Now her voice was demanded before all. The auctioneer's lips curved into a cruel smile. He believed fear would bind her. He believed she would stay silent or refuse, and the human's defiance would be broken. The human stood still, his eyes on her, calm and patient. He did not speak. He did not push her. He only waited, as if her choice was hers alone. The young woman's heart pounded. Memories rushed through her mind: nights in the cage, whispers of despair, the faces of those who had already been sold. She remembered how she had begun to lose even the memory of her own home, her family, her freedom. She remembered how she had thought no one would ever see her again. And then she remembered the human stepping into the line. She remembered his calm voice, his steady hand raised to stop the auctioneer, his defiance in front of the machines, the guards, and the beast. She remembered the way he had looked at her not as a number, not as property, but as a person. Her lips trembled. For the first time in many cycles, her voice rose, weak but clear. I choose him. The words rang through the hall like a spark striking dry wood. The crowd erupted once more. Some shouted in anger, others in shock. But many, hearing her voice, fell into uneasy silence. The auctioneer's face twisted further. He slammed his hand down on the platform. This is madness. She cannot, but he was cut short by the roar of the crowd. Buyers and merchants alike were no longer united. Some demanded the old rules, but others shouted for the promise of freedom. Whispers of humans spread again, louder now, filled with wonder. The market's order trembled under the weight of one choice. The guards, uncertain, shifted in place. Their eyes darted between the auctioneer and the human. They had seen the beast fall. They had seen the guardians broken. None wished to step forward again. The young woman stepped down from the platform. Her legs shook, but she moved with strength she had thought lost. She crossed the hall until she stood at the human's side. For the first time, she was no longer behind bars. The human nodded to her once, a simple gesture of respect. Then he turned to the auctioneer. You gave her the choice. She chose. The market has no power over her now. The auctioneer's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. He looked out at the crowd, at the shifting faces of buyers and merchants. He saw doubt where once there had been obedience. He saw cracks forming in the order he had ruled for years. The human placed his hand gently on the young woman's shoulder, guiding her toward the exit. The crowd parted slowly, some stepping back in respect, others in fear. No one moved to stop them. The young woman's heart raced as they walked. Each step carried her farther from the cage, farther from the weight of chains. She still felt the eyes of the market on her, but now she stood tall. For the first time, she walked not as property but as a person. The human's calm voice broke the silence between them. You chose. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with both gratitude and confusion. Why did you give me that choice? He met her gaze, steady as always. Because freedom is not given. It is chosen. No one can force it on you. It had to be your decision. Her chest tightened with emotion. She had never been given a choice in this place. Every day had been decided by others, her future sealed by the numbers stamped on iron plates. Now, for the first time, she had spoken for herself. Behind them, the hall of the market filled with shouts and chaos. The auctioneer tried to regain control, his voice rising in fury. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Whispers spread like fire, whispers of freedom, of humans, of courage. As they reached the gate, the young woman looked back one last time. She saw the cages, the faces pressed against iron bars, the hopeless eyes. Yet in some of those eyes, she now saw something new. She saw a spark. The gate opened, and the air outside washed over her. It smelled different, cool, wide, free. She stepped through beside the human, leaving the weight of the market behind. Her voice was quiet but certain as she spoke. I will not go back. The human gave a small nod. You will not. And together, they walked into the unknown, carrying with them not only their own hope but also the hope of all who had seen what had happened inside that hall. The heavy gate shut behind them, its iron echo rolling across the empty street. For the first time since she had been taken, the young woman stood outside the market walls. The air was cooler, touched with the scent of dust and fuel, but to her it was the smell of freedom. Her legs trembled, not from weakness but from the weight of the moment. She pressed a hand against her chest, steadying her breath. The human stood beside her, calm as ever, his eyes already scanning the dark streets that stretched ahead. Inside the hall, the noise of the crowd grew louder, carrying out through the cracks in the walls. Shouts of anger mixed with cries of wonder. The auctioneer's voice rose above them all, sharp and furious, demanding order. But the order of the market had already been broken. The human placed a hand lightly on her arm. "We must move." She nodded quickly, though fear still pulled at her heart. The market would not simply let them walk away. The auctioneer's pride had been wounded, and the merchant's power had been challenged. Retribution would follow. They moved through narrow alleys, their steps quick and quiet. The buildings around them were made of rusted metal and cracked stone, leaning close together as if trying to crush the space between. Flickering lights hung from wires above, casting broken shadows across the ground. The young woman glanced back often, certain that guards would pour from the gate at any moment. Her breath caught when she saw figures moving in the distance. "They are coming." The human gave a short nod. His pace quickened, but his calm never faltered. "We will reach the ship." A ship. The word filled her with hope. She had seen ships before, but always from behind bars, always as symbols of the freedom she thought lost. Now, the thought of stepping into one as a free person sent strength back into her tired legs. They wound through the streets, passing silent shops and shuttered stalls. The city around the market was not alive with joy but heavy with shadows. Most who lived here depended on the trade of the market, and now many watched from windows and corners as the human led the young woman away. Some eyes burned with anger. Others with fear. But a few, just a few, carried the same spark she had seen in the hall, wonder at the thought that the chains could be broken. Shouts rose again behind them. The pounding of boots on metal floors grew nearer. The guards were coming fast. The human turned sharply, guiding her into a narrow passage that cut between two leaning towers. The walls scraped their shoulders, and the ground was wet with leaking pipes. She stumbled, but his hand steadied her, never letting her fall. At the end of the passage, a small open square spread before them. And there, resting on uneven landing struts, stood a ship. It was not large or polished. Its hull was marked with scratches and dents from many journeys. But to her, it was beautiful. Its form promised escape, its engines promised the wide sky. Her eyes filled with tears she had not expected. "This is yours." The human nodded once. "It will take us away." Before they could reach it, voices shouted from behind. The guards had entered the square, their armor glinting under the broken lights. Shock sticks glowed as they closed in. The young woman froze, fear gripping her legs. The memory of cages, chains, and endless despair rose like a wave, threatening to drag her down. She could not go back. She would not. The human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the guards. His stance was calm, but his voice carried a sharp edge. "You have no claim on her. Stand aside." The guards hesitated. They had seen him defeat the machines, the beast, and their own brothers. Yet their orders were clear, and the auctioneer's wrath weighed heavy. They advanced. The human moved with the same precision as before. He did not fight to destroy but to disable. A quick strike to a wrist sent one shock stick clattering to the ground. A step aside and a sweep of the leg sent another guard crashing into the dirt. The square rang with the sound of armor falling and voices crying out. The young woman's fear shifted into awe once more. She watched as he fought not with rage but with control. Every movement had purpose, every strike aimed only to end the threat. Still, more guards poured in. The human's strength was great, but even he could not fight forever. He struck, dodged, and turned, but the circle closed tighter. The young woman's eyes darted to the ship. Its ramp was open, waiting. A thought struck her: he was fighting for her, but she was not helpless. She had a choice now, just as he had given her before. She dashed toward the ship, her heart pounding. Inside the cabin, she saw the controls glowing faintly. She had never flown before, but instinct and desperation guided her hands. She pressed buttons, pulled levers, and the engines rumbled to life. The ground shook as the ship powered up. Lights burst from its thrusters, casting long shadows across the square. The guards stumbled, some shielding their eyes. The human took the moment to strike hard, breaking free from the circle. He sprinted toward the ramp, his movements swift even after the long fight. She reached out as he leapt aboard. Together, they slammed the ramp shut. The human took the pilot's chair, his hands moving with skill across the controls. The ship groaned, lifted, and rose above the square. Below, the guards shouted and raised their weapons, but their strikes fell short. The city shrank beneath them, the broken towers and shadowed streets fading into the distance. The young woman pressed against the window, her eyes wide as the ground fell away. Stars stretched above, clear and endless. She had dreamed of this view for so long, but never had she thought it could be hers again. The human glanced at her, his face calm though his breath was heavy. We are free of the city. Soon we will be free of this world. Tears slipped down her cheeks, though she did not hide them. Her voice was soft but firm. I thought I would never see the sky again. He gave a small nod. Now it is yours to see as far as you wish. The ship broke through the final clouds, engines roaring as the planet's surface fell away. The darkness of space opened before them, filled with stars that burned like endless beacons. The young woman placed her hand against the glass, her heart full with wonder and relief. Behind them, the market still stood, still filled with cages and chains. But ahead was the vast unknown, and in that unknown lay the promise of a new life. She turned to the human, her voice steady. Thank you. He shook his head lightly. Do not thank me. You chose. You stepped forward. You took freedom with your own hands. Her chest swelled with pride she had not felt in years. For the first time, she was not only surviving. She was living. The ship soared into the stars, leaving the world of cages behind. The stars stretched endlessly before them, scattered like diamonds across the dark ocean of space. The ship moved steadily through the silence, its engines humming with a calm rhythm. For the first time in many years, the young woman sat without chains, without the weight of bars around her. She leaned against the window, her eyes wide, drinking in the sight of the universe spread before her. The human sat at the controls, his hands steady as he guided the ship. His face was calm, though lines of focus marked his brow. Every so often, he glanced at her, checking that she was well. She noticed but said nothing, her heart too full of wonder to speak. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the hum of the ship. At last she found her voice. Where are we going? The human did not turn, but his voice was steady. Far from the market. Far from their reach. There are places in the stars where no chains are made. That is where we will go. Her chest tightened at his words. For so long, she had thought escape was impossible. Yet now they were flying beyond the world that had trapped her, heading toward places she had never dreamed to see. She hesitated, then asked, "Do you have a home out there?" He paused for a moment before answering. "Home is not a place. It is people. It is choice. I have wandered many worlds, but I have never found a place I could call home. Perhaps now that will change." The thought lingered in her mind. She had lost her own home long ago, taken from it without warning, and the memory of it had grown faint. Yet as she looked at him, she felt a strange warmth, as if perhaps a new home could be made, even among the stars. Hours passed as the ship moved through the dark. She rested for a while, her body still weak from years of captivity, but her mind remained awake with thoughts of freedom. She dreamed not of cages but of open fields, wide skies, and laughter. When she woke, the stars still shone around them, endless and bright. The human noticed her stirring. "You should eat," he said, passing her a small pack. The food inside was simple but filling. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. For years she had eaten only what was given, never what she chose. Now each bite felt like a victory. As they traveled, she began to ask questions. About the stars, about the ships they passed in the distance, about the strange glowing clouds that drifted through the void. The human answered each with patience, his calm voice steady as stone. She listened closely, her heart eager to learn. In turn, he asked her about her past, though never with force. She spoke of her village, of the hills and rivers she had once known. Her voice broke as she described the day she was taken, but he listened without judgment, his silence offering her strength. For the first time, she spoke of her pain not as a burden but as a memory she was finally allowed to share. Days turned into cycles as they traveled deeper into space. The market's reach faded behind them, and with each passing moment, the weight of fear grew lighter. The young woman began to smile more often, though the smiles were small and shy. She laughed once, softly, at a clumsy joke the human offered, and the sound filled the ship with warmth. But freedom was not only escape. It was also responsibility. One night, as the stars glowed bright through the window, she turned to him. "You risked everything for me. You could have left me there." "Why?" The human's eyes stayed on the stars, but his voice was gentle. "Because no one should be a number. No one should live without choice. I saw you, and I could not turn away." Her throat tightened. She had expected many answers: duty, pity, or pride, but not this. Not the simple truth of respect. She lowered her gaze, her voice quiet. "Then I will not waste the choice you gave me." From that night, she began to learn. The human showed her how to read the ship's controls, how to track stars, how to guide their course. Her hands shook at first, but slowly they grew steady. Each time she succeeded, her heart swelled with pride. She was no longer just a passenger. She was part of the journey. One cycle, as they approached a new system, alarms lit the cabin. A patrol ship had detected them, its sharp frame cutting across the void. The young woman's fear returned, but the human placed his hand over hers. "You know what to do. Trust yourself." Her breath trembled, but she followed his guidance. She shifted controls, altered the course, and slipped the ship into the shadow of a drifting asteroid. The patrol passed by, blind to their presence. Relief flooded her chest as the danger faded. The human gave a small nod of approval. "You see. You are stronger than you believe." She smiled then, not shy but bright, her eyes alive with confidence. For the first time, she felt not like someone who had been saved but like someone who was building her own path. At last, after many cycles, they reached a quiet world. It was small, green with forests and blue with lakes. From orbit, it looked untouched, free of the scars of markets or cages. The ship landed in a wide clearing, the air outside fresh and filled with the song of unseen creatures. The young woman stepped down onto the soft grass, her feet sinking slightly into the earth. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, tears slipping down her cheeks. "This is life," she whispered. The human stood beside her, watching the horizon. His voice was calm but warm. "Yes. This is where a new path begins." Together, they walked into the forest, their steps steady, their hearts free. She no longer feared the chains of the past, for they had been broken. Ahead lay a path unknown, but it was hers to choose, hers to walk. And as the stars shone above, she knew she was not alone. She was free.